After a nice weather day, it's gloom and doom coming into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states for at least the next couple of days. We've got a little bit of snow going on in the northern plains, the northern Great Lakes. We'll take a look at the week ahead and the long range. And yes, we have something in the tropics. So we're going to take a look at that too. All that and more on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area with everything you need this upcoming winter to make sure that your home is free and clear of snow and ice, either your home or your business. They are Long Island's largest supplier of rock salt. They have all the great snow and ice melt products like Mag Ice Pellets and Flakes and Pellido. And of course, who wouldn't want two snow blowers underneath their Christmas tree, his and hers? And we have plenty of other supplies that'll get you through this in case you lose power. 631-756-1125. Nowhere can you find prices lower than this. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Good evening, Joe.
Oh, yes, Joe. A crisp, business-like good evening to you.
Yes.
Oh, anyhow, I had a really marvelous day here. Speaking of doom and gloom, that's exactly what the weather's been like here in North Georgia and across at least the northern half of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia today, and probably also up into western North Carolina. Raw, rainy. It's in the low 40s. Couldn't really do much of anything, so I put together my brand new Bissell Wet Dry Pet Wave Vacuum Cleaner. What?
There was that long pause after you said you put together your Bissell vacuum cleaner. And I'm saying to myself, now what possibly can I say to something like that except hooray?
Well, I mean, that really speaks to the day I had, pretty much. That's the one negative here, and I do love it here. It's beautiful country. I do. I don't want anybody to think that get the wrong impression. But when you do get days like this, especially in the wintertime and in the spring, and you're you're pretty much stuck inside all day. So, I mean, not that you're not stuck inside all day when the weather is like that anywhere, but I had have so many nice days here in the fall. Being cooped up in the house has been a rare experience. I do not enjoy it. I like to go to the park. I go hiking every day in the mountains. I really didn't get to do that today, so I'm a little out of sorts.
Well, today was a lovely day here, and we took advantage of the nice weather. It'll be even milder tomorrow. Temperatures tomorrow. Today we got into the mid 40s. Tomorrow we could be in the mid or even upper 50s. But the problem with tomorrow is what you had to experience today. Kind of a gloomy, and by late morning, early afternoon tomorrow, probably a rather wet weather pattern, and not overly wet. I'm thinking that, from the time it starts tomorrow until the end of the afternoon, we'll pick up maybe a grand total of 1/10 or maybe 2/10 of an inch of rain, and maybe we'll put down another half inch tomorrow night. But today we use the period of dry weather and some intervals of sunshine to put up another a couple of more Christmas decorations. We've added this year to the Rayo front lawn the elf, and every time I look at it, I'm reminded of the Keebler elf, and also the sleigh. Santa. We have Santa and two reindeer out on our front lawn, and now we also have added the lit up sleigh, which was only half lit, and Renata had to replace not one, not two, not three, but four of these teeny tiny little white lights, lest half of the sleigh didn't come on. But We spent the better part of an hour, or she spent the better part of an hour doing it. Then we hammered it into the ground, and oh, what fun it is to have such a lovely Christmas sleigh.
Yes, so very nice. Well, with my new vacuum cleaner, because it's a wet dry vac, it picks up all the dog hair. It's not like the regular vacuum cleaner where it gets clogged in the hoses. And I was able to clean my wood floors today, which was nice. I don't have to use a hand mop and a bucket and a bottle of Pine Sol anymore. So I'm uh, I'm a happy camper. So
Well,
anyway,
that's good. I didn't know that JJ shed so much.
oh, at least half a dog a week.
Oh,
I pulled out one of my recliners. I have two leather recliners. I pulled out the smaller one because it lies on an angle against the wall and it rarely gets sat on. So I had company coming. And I said, "Let me pull this out so I can clean behind it." I literally found at least a whole dog worth of hair. That's how bad.
lovely.
That's how bad. He does shed a lot. He really does. So anyway, a couple of things of note. And Timothy Veltman, thanks. I'm glad he sent this to me. Timothy Veltman sent me a link to a map that they started updating again. It's a snowfall as a percentage of normal, and you can look at it, Joe, when it comes to this is through December 4th. So basically, uh, anything that's in white or in blue has gotten normal or above normal snowfall for the month of November and the first 4 days of December. And if you looking at this map, since everybody seems to think that the entire world rotates on their own zip code, uh, this is a bit more of a revelation because Joe, if you look at where the areas that have at least gotten their normal snowfall go through November 4th, there's nothing unusual. There really isn't too much that's unusual here. It looks like, for the most part, a large part of the country is already at normal snowfall. Now, obviously, in South Dakota, Nebraska, Northwest Kansas, Eastern Colorado, they have not gotten uh, 100% of normal snowfall, and also the coastal areas of the Northeast and down into the Mid-Atlantic and South Atlantic states. But a lot of the areas that you would have expected to already have achieved their normal snowfalls for the season to date have done so. So this 5-year-old crybaby stuff that I keep seeing needs to stop. It just needs to stop.
Well, you can see that the lake effect, which got hammered a few weeks ago, they certainly are in line with above normal snowfall. But even take a look at the west side of the lower peninsula of Michigan. That too is above normal, based primarily, again, on lake effect. So we can see that lake effect contributed quite a bit to some places. But then there are other places down across the southern plains that just happened to be in the spot where a storm was passing by, supplying the moisture when it was just cold enough. And in those places, they too have above normal snowfall. But
Also I'm sorry, central Pennsylvania, near normal or even above normal snowfall for the season to date so far. And of course, out in the west, it's been quite a substantial.
right, and even for example, you see Seattle in the blue, and you say to yourself, "Oh, they got a tremendous amount of snow." No, this is just above normal. Above what they would normally anticipate to see during November and during the first 4 days of December.
Right.
And the fact that they even received any snow would place them in that particular category.
Normal may be 1/10 of an inch for the month of November for Seattle. So if they got the 1/10 of an inch, they're in the dark blue. That's why I like this map, because it respects the normal snowfall for the area that you're looking at.
Correct. This is not numerical. I mean, it's not color coded in accordance to actual inches or actual numbers. It's just in accordance with what the normal for this particular point in time would be. And yeah, it's there have been, for example, here in the New York area, some years where at this point in time we've had more than our fair share of snow in the early part of December. Actually, over these next few days, temperatures are going to be well above the normal for this particular time of the year. But again, that's this year. Next year, or in some years down the road, it may be a bit different. Certainly, it was different 4 years ago in 2018 when we had that 6-inch plus snowfall on November 15th. That placed us well above the norm at that particular point in time, but it hasn't happened this year, so
Right.
That's why we're in the red.
All right, so let's look at the satellite loop. By the way, welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight. Just want to say, I talked a little bit with Scott Briller today. His mom is not doing well, so we send our best and hope for a speedy recovery for Mother Briller. And Scott will be back ASAP. So take your time, Scott. We'll hope to see you soon. In the meantime, looking at the satellite, the nice weather is starting to give way to some clouds moving across the Great Lakes. And of course, you see all the clouds that are moving across the south, of which I am participating in some of that. And we also have some moisture out in the west. What on the far right, Joe, on the far right, is the edge of something that I was hoping wouldn't happen, but it did. And I've got the trop. I thought we were done with this, but take a look here in the right. You know what? Let me just draw the nice big circle around it, right in there. And whoops. Let me try that again. My mistake. And I'll move this out of the way so everybody can see. That, folks, is a large low that is out there in the Atlantic, east southeast of Bermuda, and it's been slowly getting a bit better organized as we've gone through the day. And the Hurricane Center actually is writing tropical weather outlooks. They issued one this morning, and they're supposed to issue another one in about 15 minutes. So it could be up at any time. And you ask, why is this important? Well, if you're sitting here wondering why we're getting all this volatility in the models, it's not just the block, but it is also this system. This system developing now kind of puts a bit of a wrench into this process that we're going through with this block, Joe, because it's actually strengthening the ridging off the East Coast. And that's kind of changing the whole profile of things in the eastern part of the United States, at least for the next 4 or 5 days anyway.
Well, I do notice one thing on the Climate Prediction Center. They have the Northeast, and in particular, I'm looking here. Hang on for a second. Central and Northern New England.
You want to share this?
Are especially above normal. Yeah, I could do that.
Hold on. I got to hit the button there.
Hit the button.
Hit the button. Hit the button. The button has been hit, so go for it.
All righty. And here, let me just show you the 6 to 10 day outlook. This takes us from the 11th to the 15th of December. Now, you don't want to see this if you're, and we've been talking about the fact that by mid-month that there would be a quite noticeable flip from above normal to below normal temperatures. Yet here we are, 11th to the 15th of December, and the Climate Prediction Center not only has virtually everybody east of the Mississippi above normal, but in particular above normal across much of New England and interior New York State. And in fact, we'll just zoom in on that for you. Look at that. That shows temperatures that, in all likelihood, at this time of the year, we should be seeing high temperatures now in the mid and upper 40s. And this would seem to suggest, even up into northern New England, temperatures that could very well be at or above 50 degrees during this time frame. But then we move forward to the 8 to 14 day outlook, and we still see across Maine and northern sections of New Hampshire, again, temperatures noticeably above normal, maybe not quite so much so over the rest of the Northeast. And in fact, a swath of near normal or more seasonable weather seemingly will be sweeping into the eastern United States sometime between the 13th and 19th of December. Probably the swing will come sometime around the 14th or 15th. So maybe indeed we will see some changes, but again, not a rapid change back to more seasonal weather. And in fact, the places that are going to be below normal and colder than normal, again, according to the CPC, will be in the central and western U.S., and especially over the northern plain states. And in terms of precipitation, well, look at this. Much of the country over the next 6 to 10 days will be seeing, or supposedly will be seeing, above normal precipitation. The only place that's below normal is down here over western Texas and southeastern New Mexico. They will have below normal complement of precipitation. And then as we go 8 to 14 days out, it's a bit of an improvement, a slight improvement, with close to near normal over the southern tier of the U.S., but still most of the country is underneath a rather wet weather pattern. And of course, my presumption would be that places in the east, it would more likely be rain, and places that are in the central or western states, much of what you see here would be more likely to be in the form of snow. But that's how it looks over the next 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 days, Joe.
Yeah.
And you know, any changes will probably be slow to occur.
Well, it's always a process. It's never an instantaneous moment that all of a sudden a pattern changes. And certainly the development of any kind of tropical system now in the Atlantic is where we showed you there on the satellite is also going to slow this process down. I'm still thinking though mid-month of December and on that we're going to be in a colder pattern overall. We're going to get there. It's just going to be a little more frustrating in the process. And of course, models are all over the place still with figuring out how all of this and the block to the north and how this all gets all meshed up and how it all evolves. So it's going to make for particularly tough forecasting for the next week or so. I guess the part that that just gets to me is the fact that everybody's it's just ridiculous. It's the 5th of December, for God's sake. There's nothing here that's unusual. I don't understand. I really and truly do not understand this 5-year-old mentality that people have. When it comes to snow, it gets worse every year. It gets absolutely worse every year. So I had somebody, I'm not even going to mention his name because he was obviously trolling, because it hasn't snowed, Joe, in eastern Maryland near Chesapeake Bay, okay? Because it hasn't snowed yet. It's all climate change, and it's never going to snow again. So, I mean, this is just stupid stuff. I mean, when you're going to say stupid stuff, don't say it here. Go say it someplace else because I don't have the patience for it. So, anyhow, the Hurricane Center, by the way, now has a 40 to 50%, 40% in 2 days, 50% in the next 5 that this thing in the Atlantic becomes a subtropical or a tropical storm. So, knock yourself out. That'll make the tropical storm season above normal if we get the O storm.
And you wouldn't have thought that would have been possible at the end of August, where we had no tropical systems for nearly 2 months. And you said, boy, if we do ever get back on track, we'll probably end up below the norms for tropical activity. And here we are, as you just said, Joe, if this system does develop and does get christened with a name, that would put this particular hurricane or tropical storm season above normal.
Right.
But we had to wait until early December in order to do it.
Right. That's why everybody has to just shut up about snow in the wintertime. Just shut up. Okay. So here's the radar, and as of, well, you know what? Let me make sure let me refresh it. It suddenly got silent outside. I thought it was pouring rain here before, and I'm looking at the radar, and you can see there's actually some heavier precip just to my west. So I'm going to have a nice night with the bullets being fired on the metal roof. But in the Northeast, it's quiet, obviously, down into the Mid-Atlantic states. This area is moving east through Tennessee and Alabama, North Georgia, and it covers much of South Carolina, western North Carolina. We've got some snow going on up in the in and around the Great Lakes, particularly as you go north up into Wisconsin and points northward, also on the Canada side of Michigan and Lake Huron, and also getting a little bit of snow up in the northern plains and some areas that are scattered around from Colorado back to Utah, Nevada, and some precip still coming into California. WPC, the Weather Prediction Center. We're going to look at the rainfall amounts here. Let's do the 3-day. So with what we're getting for in the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states for Tuesday into Wednesday, looks like a half to 3/4 of an inch. Robust rainfall amounts for Arkansas, southernmost Missouri, across Tennessee and Kentucky, into southern West Virginia, down to the borders of Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, 1.5 to maybe about 2 or 3 inches on top of what's already fallen today. And you're also seeing some ample moisture, half to 3/4 of an inch coming into the Pacific Northwest. The 7-day totals actually, Joe, in the West, because that's where the real troughing is going to be, in the West. And they've got several to many inches of rain being indicated up and down from Washington State down to Northern California, almost to San Francisco, and the Sierra Nevadas, the Cascades, all getting their due of heavy snows there. Also up in the Northern Rockies. So, and meanwhile, also wet weather in the east, which is good. A lot of areas in the east, especially here in the southeast, it's been pretty dry for a while. So it's nice to see a little bit of the soaking rain getting into the picture.
And on the chat board, John Charles asking the question: what is the O storm name? John Charles, the O storm, if it indeed is christened, that system in the Atlantic right now, if it indeed is christened as the O storm, it would be Owen, Owen, and that would be the O storm for 2022.
Yes, exactly. Snowfall. Get on a plane and go west. That's where you'll find it. This is the 72-hour snowfall for at least. Wait a minute, hold on. This is supposed to be. Do I have the right map up? Yes, I do. I'm sorry. Let me just make the opacity a bit higher so everybody could see it. So there's your probabilities for at least 2, and that is across right along the border there, just south of the border of Washington, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota into Minnesota. Blue, the dark blue is 40% or higher for at least 2. So when you get into the reds, you're talking about 80 to 100% probability of at least 2. And for substantial snows, we'll click on the 8, and you can see it's pretty minimal. There are a couple of areas in western Colorado, northwestern Montana, and also in the Cascades, where there's a higher probability in a few spots for at least 8. Needless to say, in the Northeast and around the Great Lakes, we don't have that issue. I'll lower it to 2, and even for 2 inches, we don't even we barely have that issue up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and into northeastern Minnesota, and that's about it as far as snow as the east is concerned over the next 3 days. So just with respect to the upper air, I just want to start with the North Atlantic. I'm going to use the European tonight and I'll switch over to the GFS in a moment. But you could see pretty well the impact here of the block developing, and you see it there on the upper right, that big purple area that's way above normal, higher than normal pressures in the North Atlantic. Also south of Bermuda. This is going back to yesterday. You have this upper low that was sitting east of the Bahamas and south of Bermuda, and an upper high out here in the Gulf, in the Western Gulf. Here's your trough that's in the east that's swinging through, another arm that's coming around behind it. So as we go forward, with that low developing out there, and here you see it for today, this evening, at closed upper low, what that's doing, let's redraw it here. So right in there, as this thing starts to amplify, it also strengthens this upper high in the Gulf of Mexico and kind of pushes ridging up along the east coast. There's also another upper low that's dropped down to well east of the Delaware coast and south of Nova Scotia. So with all this troughing here that's out in the Atlantic, that forces ridging up between it and then this trough, this deep trough that's out in the plains. And there's your block, but the block is out here between Greenland and Iceland trying to build westward. Well, it can't really do it because now that we've got this mess here in the Atlantic, it's basically stopped the process, at least for the time being. And you can see that upper low goes absolutely nowhere. This is now into Thursday, and it's still out there, amplifying the ridging in the Gulf of Mexico. So we have to wait now for the Atlantic to clean itself up a little bit, which it does do eventually late in the weekend, and the European does start to bring troughing back into the eastern part of the United States around the 13th, 14th of December, and after that, it's anyone's guess. I mean, Joe, I could just say that I said earlier. I don't think it really changes where the destination is. I think it's just that this development of this tropical system in the Atlantic kind of slows things down as far as getting to a more wintry type pattern in the eastern part of the United States by about a week or so, I think.
Well, I think, let's say in the immediate New York City metropolitan area, for all of the snow lovers, or not necessarily the snow lovers, but just the winter weather, the cold weather lovers. I mean, from my take, we may very well get into a pattern of cold temperatures, but it may not come for a while. It may not come until, as you just noted, Joe, maybe about the middle of this month, maybe around the 15th or 16th. It seems like more often than not, from now till then, we're going to be flirting with above normal temperatures. And this is especially so tomorrow. Tomorrow night, for the lower Hudson Valley, I went for a low temperature tomorrow night of 50 to 55. For goodness sake, the normal low temperature at this time of the year in the lower Hudson Valley is something like the normal high temperature, I should say, for the lower Hudson Valley at this time of the year is 43 degrees. And I'm going for a low tomorrow night of 50 to 55. What does that tell you? That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But we've had battles like this. We certainly saw what happened in the month of November, where we kind of swung from one extreme to the other. At the beginning of the month, to the cold and the lake effect snowstorm that we had before Thanksgiving, and then it kind of moderated again after that. But I'm still thinking that we're going to get to where to a more wintry pattern in time. It's just not going to, again, it's the 5th of December. Okay, I can't. I could probably count on one hand how many times I remember accumulating snow happening before the 10th of December. It just does not happen very often.
It doesn't. It does not. Now, you just talked about November, and Rob Friedowitz, who we mention frequently here and keeps an eye on climate, just finished and published today his November 2022 summation. And he points out that despite the fact that November 2022, and you all remember this, it started off very mild. I mean, you're talking about, my goodness, look how warm it is out there. In spite of that, November 2022 ended up failing to rank among the 10 mildest Novembers. Never before, he said, in the month of November, never before has the month of November started with such a sustained string of unseasonably mild days with an average high-low of 68.55 for the first 12 days of November, 11 degrees above average. Now, you say to yourself on November 12th, my God, we're heading for probably one of the warmest, if not the warmest November on record. And yet, even though this included 5 days in the 70s and 3 days with lows in the 60s, and 10 of the days had highs of 66 or warmer, it still didn't end up as among as among the 10 mildest, or in the list of the 10 mildest Novembers, because after November 12th, everything went spiraling down and more than made up for all of that heat during the final 2 or 3 weeks of the month of November. Despite this record warm start, the month was denied a spot among the 10 mildest Novembers, and this was due to an 8-day string of unseasonably chilly conditions mid-month from the 14th of November to the 21st of November. That was 7 degrees colder than average. The high-low was 44.34, and this included the fall's first low of 32 or colder on November the 19th. Overall, the month did end up above average. It did end up warmer than normal by 2.9 degrees and finished as the 13th mildest November on record. For your information, 6 of the top 10 are in this 21st century. So we were going like gangbusters for the first couple of weeks of November, but then the rest of November more or less cooled off. And again, while it didn't end up below normal, it only ended up 2.3 degrees above normal, still enough to rank among number 13 among the warmest Novembers. But still, you wouldn't have thought that during the first
I would have
12
thought
days
that
of the month.
I would have thought that it would took more than 3 degrees above normal to get you in the top 13 in a database of 150 something Novembers.
Yeah.
That's a fairly low bar to reach.
The 5 days with highs in the 70s in November tied for 5th place from most in the month of November. November 1952 had the most with 7. The 3 days with lows in the 60s were the most in November since 1975, which had 4. That was the most. And despite all of this, however, November 2022 had 5 days with lows of 59 or milder, the most of any November. So
Wow.
there you go.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think you're probably going to see temperatures near or a little bit below normal at the end of this week, particularly Friday and Saturday with a northeast wind and a raw flow with that high to the north. But we'll got to get there first. And in the meantime, of course, we've got some rain for tomorrow night into Wednesday. And there's not much here other than a cold front, and it's a very slow-moving front because of the higher pressures offshore, and then that system that's out in the Atlantic is just basically slowing everything down to a crawl. That goes out. There is colder high pressure that builds up in southeastern Canada starting on Thursday, so I think you're going to see some low-level colder air bleeding down into the northeast and down into the northern mid-Atlantic states. I don't know how much improvement, though, you're going to see weather-wise, Joe. It looks like we might stay cloudy. There's no real mechanism to clear it out quickly behind this front once it goes offshore. And then the next system is already on its way Thursday night and Friday, starting to move rain into the Ohio Valley, a cold rain. And I think there still may wind up being a little snow on the northern edge of this. Maybe in the higher elevations in Pennsylvania down into West Virginia and northwestern Virginia might see some wet snow out of this. That low, I think, is overdone. It's going to be weaker and probably just reform off the coast. And, there's no real upper air support for this to intensify because of everything that's out offshore. And then that high just still builds down here right through the weekend and into Monday. It's going to be a northeast wind for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday probably before the next weather system. Now, I'm not even 100% sure if this is right, that Joe, this next low early next week winds up going. It's so funny. This was a low that the model was taking straight east and off the New Jersey coast just 2 days ago. Now it can't even get further east than it goes to Duluth, for God's sake. I mean, how crazy is that?
You're right. You're right.
And not
Well,
only did the GFS take that one there, but it's got another one that it takes there. I mean, they almost never go that far west, but because of what's happening out in the Atlantic until that gets resolved, um, yeah, I mean, it's not impossible. Now, I will just say I will just put a little footnote on this with this blocky pattern going on. If we come in tomorrow and and everything is totally different tomorrow, I would not at all be surprised.
no, these sometimes these model runs change on a dime, and depending upon what that system out in the Atlantic does, if it intensifies, yeah, that's one thing. It may just you know surprise everybody and fade out instead. And if that be the case, then the risk or the possibility of colder air here in our part of the country will tend to increase. But we'll see.
Got a couple of super chat hits.
I see
So,
Anthony Orr hit one.
oh, Anthony Orr, our resident statistician, pointing out to, by the way, Anthony um, told me that Joe, December of all the months of the year, December is behind May. It's the number two. It's number two when it comes to tropical storm activity. 28 recorded named storms in the month of December, which is second in the for off-season months, behind the month of May, which has had 52 tropical name systems, 52 tropical systems.
Yeah, yeah, you could have, and it's probably a lot. Well, it's a lot more difficult, I think, for May because they may still be working with a rather chilly ocean. I would have thought that it would have been the reverse, that the ocean still would be rather warm in some years and allow for tropical activity to continue to be maintained into December. But I think it would be a heck of a lot more difficult in May, where you might be working or coming off of a rather cold winter. The water temperature may be still rather cool or rather chilly, but nonetheless, that is interesting. I remember one hurricane on Christmas Eve. I now it must be like 30 or maybe even 40 years ago. That was Hurricane Lily on Christmas Eve occurring, and that must have been kind of weird. Folks over at the Hurricane Center figured that here's Christmas and we have some time off, or we have an easy go of it, and now all of a sudden they have to suddenly start posting advisories for a hurricane on Christmas Eve. That again was not last year, but a good number of years ago. I don't have the year in front of me, but I do remember it well. I do remember it happening.
Was it Lily of the valley, in the valley way on yonder over there? Super chat hits tonight from Ken Musillo and Anthony Orr and Birder Lady, all hitting the tip jar. And we thank you very much indeed for doing that. Most appreciated. Thank you. I'm just trying to see. There was a question here. I saw it. Now I lost it. Hold on just a second.
1984. I just looked it up, and in 1984, Hurricane Lily. It actually dissipated by Christmas Eve, but leading into the Christmas season, the only known hurricane to exist in the Atlantic during Christmas week, having max winds of up to 80 miles an hour. 1984, the year that the lovely Mrs. Rayo and I got hitched. So
Yes. Time went by pretty quick, didn't it?
yeah, it sure did. Went by like it went by like a century.
The minutes will fly like hours, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, your life is over. Um, yeah, Joe Lopresti was reading.
Sorry, dear.
Yes, just Joe Lopresti was reading some of the comments on my Facebook page. December is a bust. It's December 6th, December 5th, actually. Yeah, I know. It's 5-year-olds. That's how 5-year-olds react. You know, they scream up and down. They just act out of control if they can't get what they want, and if they can't get it now. So I just told a whole bunch of them to just stop acting like 5-year-olds. So I'm just trying to see. I lost. I saw there was a question here, and I just lost it. So anyhow, look. Bottom line is the weather is the weather. It's going to do what it's going to do when it's going to do it. So I'm not going to getting all upset over it is really pretty silly. And you know what, Joe? And by the way,
I was about to say to one of the moderators, please get rid of that piece of trash that was on the chat board a few seconds ago. And
we had a piece of trash on the chat board. Who?
Oh yes.
Who?
Yes.
Who?
I'm not gonna. No.
Oh, I see it.
Don't.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Most appreciated. I guess I guess we must be we must be doing well, Joe, because the porn bots are here.
Right.
Anyhow, how'd your talk go tonight?
That went over very well. A lot of people. The only drawback is that this Mars Moon event may very well be obscured because of cloud cover. Although hope springs eternal. You know what I'm thinking, and it may be, I don't know how much of it may happen. The low level moisture on Wednesday evening may be in place. At least I don't think it's going to be coming from an easterly direction. No, I think it's going to be more from a southerly direction. And the mid and high levels of the atmosphere Wednesday night are actually going to be quite dry. And I think if the upper level winds are vigorous enough, it may actually cause some holes to develop in the low cloud cover and give us a shot at seeing the moon from time to time on Wednesday for the event, as the moon very closely either passes Mars, or if you're up north of where I am, upstate New York and much of the United States, you'll be able to see the moon actually go in front of Mars for a while and cover it up. But I'd say right now the odds of our seeing it or seeing the moon on Wednesday night is only about 30%. But hope springs eternal, and maybe there'll be a few fortuitous holes in the clouds for us to see that celestial event on Wednesday night.
I finally found the question. Jess Harden lives in the one of the snow capitals of the deep south in northern Alabama. Says, are we going into a neutral pattern on the La Nina? From what I've read, the La Nina is forecast to weaken, and that by the time we get to February, we will be neutral. So that's the forecast. They've been trying to make this La Nina go away for 2 years. This is the third year of the La Nina. They've been trying to get rid of it for the last 2. So don't hold your breath that it's gone by February, but it has to go away eventually. It always has. So it's expected to start to weaken and then eventually go to a neutral, neither a La Nina or an El Nino, just neutral.
La Nada.
La Nada. That's right. Eric DJZ is quoting me correctly. We could have all the cold and blocks in the world, and it wouldn't matter because you could still wind up with not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing, depending on how and where the block's set up. And that's it. That's
it.
That's the pearl of wisdom.
After talking for about an hour and 15 minutes and then going directly into this show now, and we've been on now for 44 minutes, I'm a little bit.
Yeah, no, me too. These late starts are difficult for me and my aging body, who likes to go to bed now at 9 o'clock. But we will persevere, and you and I will be back tomorrow night at 8:30.
Yes, I have 2 talks this week, and I believe I have 2 talks next week, and then I'll be done for a little while.
All right.
So,
Well, we'll talk about next week later.
right.
So everybody have a great night. Thanks for being here as always. Thanks for this hitting the tip. Those of you who hit the super chat tip jar, thank you very much. And Joe and I will be back tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern time. So nighty night, everybody.
Have fun.